No developer yet.
Get the wad of cash.
What I did my math.
Oh, the economic sector. No.
Yep.
And then I have this too. I just wrecked my brain thinking about, if you ever want to look at that. Priority of lien holders.
Mm-hmm.
Really know it.
Technically.
Are we missing a chair?
They're sort of in there, yeah.
Thanks, sorry about that. Randy, how are you?
Good, yourself?
It's always like that for me.
Yeah, memorize it.
All right. So, I believe all the board members are here. I'll call the Board of Adjustments and Appeals meeting to order. Ms. Work, will you please take a roll?
Mr. Rieger,
Present.
Ms. Schmitz,
Present.
Mr. Friesen,
Present.
Mr. Elstrom,
Here.
Mr. Taylor, Ms. Sheldorn, Chair Finn.
Here. So there are 5 board members present. So therefore, 4 affirmative votes are required to grant a variance or appeal. The board is authorized to grant or deny a variance by Part 3, Section 60 of the Englewood City Charter. Anyone aggrieved by a decision rendered by this board may appeal that decision to a court of record. However, such appeal must be made within 30 days of the board's decision. Any approved variance is effective at the end of the appeal period. Building permits for construction associated with an approved variance will not be issued until the appeal period is ended. Building permits must be obtained and construction begun within 180 days of the variance's effective date. Procedure for the meeting is that the case will be introduced. An overview will be given by staff. Applicant will present their request and reasons for the variance. Proponents will be given an opportunity to speak. Opponents will address the board. And if needed, staff will again address the board. The public hearing for case number VAR 2019-001, which is by John and Kathy Moore, 3265 South Race Street, is now open. The applicant is requesting a variance to encroach 14 feet into the 25-foot front setback in the R1A zone district. I have verification of the publication and posting of the subject property. Staff, if you could give us an overview.
Do you swear or affirm an perjury that you will tell the truth in the proceeding and sort of word of adjustment and anything else?
I do.
State your name.
Will Charles. Good evening. So as you said, this is a variance to encroach into the front setback, approximately 14 feet into the required 25-foot front setback that's required in the R1A zone district. This property was annexed into the city around 1946. The subject property is about 10,400 square feet, with the house that currently stands there being a 1,890 square foot single-family residence. The applicant's proposing to demolish this house and then construct a new single-family residence that would encroach approximately 13.5 feet into the front setback. As the current house stands, it actually as well encroaches into the setback, where it is about 3 feet into the required 25-foot. And then most of the other houses along the entirety of the block seem to be about 10 feet closer to their property lines than the one that's currently existing. With the new structure, this house would be closer to the rest of the homes on the block than what currently exists as far as symmetry-wise. The surrounding properties are what makes this property unique. Most of the other homes, as I said, are approximately 10 feet into the required 25-foot front setback. The public right-of-way at this location is considerably wider than what is typical for the city. As far as the proposed house, it'd be approximately 35 feet back from the back of curb. So as you can tell, the setback or the property line itself kind of sits a considerable amount back from where the actual back of curb is. Staff doesn't feel that if this variance is granted, it would create any public health, safety, or welfare issues. Most of this neighborhood is comprised of single-family residential homes. The proposed amendment would not impair current or future conforming properties. Both the neighbor to the north and south of this property submitted neighborhood notifications on it in the affirmative for it. As well, where the house is being proposed, as you can see from these pictures, would be more in line with the houses on either side of it. Additionally, since the house is being scraped, however, there is potential that it could be built to the current setback. However, that would put it in a vastly different spot than the houses on either side of it. For this reason, staff does not take a position with respect to this variance. I can answer any questions you might have.
Does the board have any questions for staff?
What's the typical right-of-way?
Typical right-of-way is 60 feet, and I don't think it's so much that the right-of-way itself is wider as it is skewed to one side. At least that's kind of the impression I got from looking at from this picture. You can kind of see how it, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but this is the back of curb, and it's kind of pushed considerably in from the side.
And you're saying it's not like that on the other side of the street?
Not that I'm aware of from looking at that one.
The two houses that are on either side of it, do you know when they were constructed?
I do not.
But presumably it was before this particular setback rule.
Right. Right, or, I mean, it might be something just to do with the planners at the time not checking for the property line to back a curb issue. I know that there was an addition onto the southern house that was done within the last 15 years or so, for the kind of the garage addition to it. But that's what kind of made it all in line with the rest of the houses that are the rest of the way down the block. And this picture on the back kind of shows, and it's a little more zoomed in, but the houses above the green are also kind of in line with the same houses in the property. Squared in yellow is our subject property.
So we'll have to take your word that they're kind of in line, considering we don't see the fronts of the houses in this picture.
Right, right. Yeah, and I mean, you can obviously see the one house in this one, but
I don't know if the question is to you or maybe to the applicant, but I'm just wondering where the 12.1 feet came from. How was that arrived?
I think it would be a good question to the applicant. From our conversations leading up to it, I think it was mostly to get it in symmetry, a little more symmetry between them and the neighboring houses. As you can see kind of from both sides that they are considerably far back. And a house built to the setback would have to be 3 feet further back than what's in this picture.
So a staff view that you're saying what makes this unique is symmetry to the other lots?
That, well, I mean, as far as the first, set criteria, so the unique physical condition exists such as size, shape, location, topography, or surroundings, which are peculiar to the land or structure involved, which deprive the applicant of privileges enjoyed by the other properties in the vicinity. I think as far as our staff input on it, the last part of that is kind of the important. Applicant privileges enjoyed by other properties in the vicinity. Most of the other properties in the vicinity are encroaching into this front setback.
But you can't tell us why. If they were built before the setback was put in, or that staff missed it.
Right.
Board, any other questions for staff at this time? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
If the applicant could please come forward to testify in the case. Please state your name and address to the secretary who will administer the oath.
Swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you would tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeal?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
I'm the applicant, John Moore, 3265 South Ray Street. So thank you, Board. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you tonight. I actually had the chance to watch you in January. I just wanted to actually take the time to thank you for your service. I reckon as citizens, it serves us well, and I also recognize the challenge that it is trying to adopt council's laws into reality. I realize your packet did not include the narrative that I wrote along with my application, and I'd like to confirm that you now have it.
We do have it.
Okay.
I don't know if all the board has had a chance to review it.
I will go through that because those already would have addressed some of the questions raised, and I'll just use those as my talking points if that's acceptable.
That is.
Because I do want to make sure that those points are brought into this. Again, in short, our request is simple. We would like to encroach 13 and a half feet, rounded to 14 feet into the front setback so that we can build our new home consistent with the existing neighborhood. A little bit of history. My wife grew up just a couple houses down on Ray Street. We returned to the neighborhood in 1996, so we've been in that house for 22 years. Over the last several years, we've been trying to remodel the home, going through many variations, moving as close as we could to construction, and just finally reached the point that due to structural concerns, in the cost of retrofitting a 1952 home, it just no longer makes sense to try to make the old home work. So we finally gave in and have just accepted that rebuilding is a better option for us. Our hope is still to build a home that is consistent with the neighborhood both today and where the neighborhood is headed. We have had pop tops and scrapes in our neighborhood, as prevalent throughout the area. Our goal is to build a home that works for us now and for many years. The unique physical conditions, there's two unique physical conditions I'd like the board to truly understand and consider. The first is the right-of-way. I'll be more explicit. It is unusually large on the west side of the road. The typical right-of-way is 60 feet. On the east side of the road, it goes, I had a survey done at 3260. The property line is 30 feet from the center of the street. On the west side of the road at 3265, the property line is 42 feet from the center of the street. So there are 12 extra feet on the west side of Race that differ from what is typical in the city and is certainly, I can tell you from surveys, is explicitly true on my block. So that is, I want to be very clear about that. The surveys I did not provide the survey of 3260, not realizing that might be valuable, but the surveys provided do show the extra, the larger right-of-way on our side. That does mean that to build the home that we're envisioning without variance, we would be looking at building a house 47 feet off of the sidewalk, which is just not appropriate in the lots we have in the neighborhood in Inglewood, and again would be inconsistent with the current neighborhood. The second condition that's related to it is all of the homes in the neighborhood are much closer than the 47 feet that would otherwise be required by code. In the attached survey, which again a professional survey, that's not my work, I have shown that the neighbors immediately to the north of me and immediately to the south of me are 12.3 feet and 13.5 feet respectively. They've already encroached 12 and 14 feet basically into the setbacks and are roughly 33 to 34 feet off of the sidewalk. Again, using the house across the street as an example, at 3260, it is about 34 feet off the sidewalk. City's right-of-way on that side is just shy of 10 feet. The house, a little bit of history addressing some of the points I already raised. Our house was built in 1992. The one at 3260 was 1954. I have every reason to believe the houses in that neighborhood were all built right around the early 50s. I think that's safe for me to say. So they were I do not know what the setback requirement was in 1952. I do know, however, what's kind of interesting, speaking of the house south of me at 3275, it was added onto in the front in 1999. To staff's knowledge, to my knowledge, those setback rules were the same at that point in time as they are today. That house was added on without a variance. We were living there at the time. I know that there was no variance posted, and there's no, to my knowledge, staff verified. My understanding is staff verified there's no variance on record for. I think actually Mr. Will confirmed that earlier, that there's no variance with respect to that house at 3275. So in general, the neighborhood was built about 35 feet, off the sidewalk, give or take. And the one house besides mine that was a little bit further back was allowed to move forward as recently as 1999 without issue. It does, I'm just speculating here, but it does seem everything's consistent with the idea that a normal right-of-way applied. It would have made sense in why the one house was built without a variance. It would also kind of explain why the whole neighborhood is roughly 35 feet from the sidewalks. But in fairness, that is speculation on my part. I can't prove that one way or the other. So in short, our request there is that we would like to be able to move our current house forward 11 feet, so we'd be encroaching 13 and a half feet into the setback. It would be consistent in the neighborhood, and I do stress that it would be, it would allow us not to be deprived of the privileges enjoyed by the other properties in the neighborhood, which from our perspective is backyard space. We have an enormously large backyard. The city owns 22 feet of it. We do not wish to even increase that further and take away the space we need in the backyard to where we spend our time and where we train our dogs, et cetera, live our lives. Noting just the other criteria for variances, again, there's nothing here with respect to health, safety, or welfare, or impairing the use of the properties adjacent to us, and my neighbors immediately adjacent have submitted their affidavits in support. And certainly from my perspective, this variance is not a self-imposed hardship, yet that we are just trying to deal with the unusually large right-of-way and conform with the existing neighborhood. With that, I would love to help with any questions or concerns that you may have.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
What's the square footage of the house that you're building?
If I may turn my head for a second. What's the footprint? 2,600 for the footprint? The footprint is 2,600 square feet. There will be a partial second floor. So the house will be a little larger, not a lot larger than we currently have. I think what is actually shown in the county, I'm sorry, what I know, the footprint we've got planned is 2,600 square feet with basement and then a half a story upstairs.
Plus the covered patios, I presume?
Yeah, the covered patios would be on top of that. We're not asking for any variances on lot coverage issues.
Why didn't you attach the garage? Is there a setback issue with that? If the garage is attached, or why is the garage not? Are you redoing the garage, or is that going to be a new garage?
The way it's designed, there will be a one-car garage attached, accessible from the front. We wanted that attached for safety reasons, so there will be that. We have left the flexibility to add a second attached garage in the alley, again, that would be conforming, but for safety reasons, we couldn't attach from the back without losing a lot of backyard space, so we did do one car in the front for more safety and accessibility.
So the 24 by 24 two-car garage is not currently there? That would be proposed?
That is correct. That is correct.
So that driveway for the front access is not shown at this point, or is that on the drawing?
I do believe it was on here. Yeah, if we could do on the keyboard? Oh, sweet. Hey, look at that. Okay, so the driveway, the garage is on the left side, south side of the front of the house, and just is kind of hidden under the tree, but I believe the driveway is there. You can actually see it going to the street.
Yeah, I think I see it now.
Okay, I had to keep these 8.5 by 11. It makes it very hard to read. I will also note that on this survey here, just to point it out, that we had the surveyor survey the houses, one house to the south and two houses to the north, just to show the additional setbacks. So while I can't give you numbers for the whole block, there's at least 3 other houses shown on here just to give the general setback of the neighborhood.
So I'll ask you the same question I asked staff. How did you arrive at the 12-foot proposed setback, 12.1 feet?
What we've what I've done is asked to move up to the same distance of the house is immediately south of me. So we've asked only to go as far forward as 3275 is. Whether we scoot back a little bit or not from there, we've left flexibility, but I'm asking to go no further forward than 3275.
And 3275 is the house that you're saying, in your memory, did not get a variance to build that garage where it is? Or that addition?
Actually, it's not a garage. It is 2 bedrooms, and I think it's more than, I think we can say more than my memory. I know it wasn't posted at the time, and staff has verified that no variance was granted. Staff can confirm that. I'm not misspeaking. But again, that's very consistent with the house north of me is about a foot different.
So, board, any other questions?
I'd have one. It's maybe more of a statement. I'm really surprised that you're willing to build this house and lose a big tree, both front and back. They're beautiful trees. You know, if I had my way environmentally as a socially responsible person, I wouldn't be taking those trees down. So I'd be interested in why you're doing that.
So first, there's a number of factors. Right now, the biggest problem, again, has been the original plans that we have been pursuing would not have changed the footprint of this house one bit. It just doesn't work. There's too many issues. So at that point, I'm forced. If I accept that, I'm forced to move this. Where we actually end up on the trees is not, the backyard tree is not actually, it doesn't necessarily need to go. The front, we can still shift things around. What I'm asking, what we've done here is just allowed ourselves, how would we maximize the front yard? We may choose to push back. But it's also noting those trees are older. The front one has an increasing rate of mortality with it in terms of the amount that dies. So I will also factor in the true long-term nature of the house versus where that tree is in its lifespan. And I apologize, I touched on the tree. Did I get the other?
The tree was the issue. I think you're going to lose both the one in the front and the one in the back due to the construction.
I wish I could have built the house we had planned, but that, again, we're just, and again, there's the other element. I don't want to tear this house down either, but we've got roots in the community that leave us in the position between the long ties that we've had in this community and the service, as well as dealing with aging parents and everything else. And plus, we love the location. We're kind of committed to sink more into this than would otherwise be economically justified so that we can stay put.
And I think we probably all understand that. And I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I think that, to be honest, what I have problems with is 1 and 4, because this is a scrape. We don't have on 3275 if there was a variance or not. I know we did a variance a while back for a house that wanted to push in kind of similar to this. They wanted to do an addition and push into the front, and we allowed that because of where the house was placed at the time, and the variance wasn't in place. But it's hard for me to get my head around granting a variance for a brand new structure when we had a couple of weeks ago a guy that wanted to build a house, and it was a preset put into place, and he was going to be in the back setback, and we wouldn't allow that. It's and again, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but for me, I guess that's what I'm trying to get my head around, is that in a lot of ways it is what it is. So could you, you could obviously push the house back. It would decrease your backyard.
Yes.
You could add additional square footage to the top. I understand your reservation with the right-of-way, but, you know, the right-of-way in essence is not your property.
Fair. I'd love to address it. The latter point, we're not interested in it. We're building this home to last us for the long term. I want a single story that is livable. All we've put upstairs is something that is basically office space, works fine where we are in our current stage of life, and won't be necessary for us in the later stage of life. And when time comes to sell the house, it's designed to be turned into 2 bedrooms in an ideal family home for a larger family. But otherwise, we do not, our neighborhood is primarily, except for one house, it's currently 1-story homes. Move to the west, that starts changing, but our general area is 1-story homes, so we're trying not to be too out of place with the neighborhood. On the right-of-way issue, I don't view as so minor, and I'll share it this way. Even if I wanted to just rebuild what I've got today, but not only for the sake of updated plumbing and electrical, but rather than building on a 65-year-old cracked foundation, just start fresh and redo what I would want to do today, I've got to come in here and get a variance to do that.
Correct.
That also means that my neighbors, who maybe could find themselves wanting to scrape, have the ability to, as long as they can reuse their foundation, they have a permanent ability to build that far forward without needing a variance by just preserving the foundation. Preserving the foundation in my case doesn't make, again, it doesn't work for me. So I would argue that my neighbors do have an extra privilege there, in that in somewhat their encroachment is protected, even with certainly the kind of, even as long as they can manage to reuse enough of their foundation to avoid the need for a variance.
Yeah, that would be a question for staff, is if you just stripped it down to the foundation, if that's enough. I mean, we've never had anyone, the other one that came in front of us was not, they didn't clear it down to the foundation, it was a simple addition.
The one, again, I didn't anticipate this question. We have had one scrape in the neighborhood at Dartmouth Place that, again, my understanding was the individual, they wanted to do a remodel. When they got into it with asbestos problems and everything else, they did scrape. They scraped from the foundation up. It is very clear, just visibly driving by, no setback issue. They continue to encroach on their setback. No variance was posted for that property either, because they preserved. I did ask Will this question, and he can verify afterwards that preserving the foundation is sufficient to avoid the need for variance. Again, I'll please ask that he.
We'll have him back up. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you very much for your
Mr.
time
Moore.
and consideration.
Are there any persons present who wish to speak in favor of this request? There's no one indicated. Are there any persons present who wish to speak in opposition of this request? Please, sir, if you could come forward and state your name and address for the secretary who will administer the oath.
My name is Brent Kirkpatrick, address 2339 East Floyd Place.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do. I noticed the application for variance sign in this gentleman's yard earlier this week. Then I became aware of his request to have a variance for the 25-foot setback. And I have no animosity towards you. In fact, I've seen you run down my street for years. I am a Hampton Hills resident in Inglewood of 45 years. And the reason I'm here talking tonight is I'm trying to maintain the architectural integrity of Hampton Hills. This community was built in the early 50s. My home was built in 1952, and it was one of the first homes built in the Hampton Hills area. The lot sizes, as I'm sure you know in Inglewood, the minimum in this area for R1A is 9,000 square feet. The allowable square footage on that lot would be 3,150 square feet. So you can build a home larger than you're proposing, but accommodating that 25-foot setback. On my street, Floyd Place, there are 24 homes. All of them are in a plane with the 25-foot setback. Not one of them encroaches. My street looks like a nice green belt, green yard all the way down. No houses imposing on that setback. The house to the south of this gentleman's house, I believe that that was a garage built originally and probably did not ask for a variance. It was remodeled about 2 years ago as living space. The house to the north of this gentleman's house, I'm not sure where it stands in agreement or not with the 25-foot setback. But I can tell you in Hampton Hills that confidently 99% of the homes are maintaining the 25-foot setback. There is a home on, I believe, the corner of Vine and Eastman that was remodeled probably 10 years ago, and they did a bump out on the Vine Street side, which I believe encroaches on that 25-foot setback. I don't know whether they got a variance for that or not. The only thing that I'm trying to do tonight is maintain, as I said, the architectural integrity of the neighborhood. I think the value of the homes in Hampton Hills have been established and maintained because of the setback, single story, home size, etc. And I'm concerned that we're creating a slippery slope here. The house to the south encroached. This home would like to go up to where that house went. I don't want to be here 2 years from now and have somebody asking for a variance to build a house 5 feet from the sidewalk, which I think might be understandable as a concern when you look at what's happened in Denver, for example. They're allowing homes to be built right up to the lots, front, back, side. That, I don't think, is a good plan for Inglewood and particularly for Hampton Hills. So that's my piece on that.
I have a theoretical question for you.
Yes.
Would you rather have a house, purely theoretical, into the setback, 14 feet, and then a big 2-story, go as high as it could, square box? Or would you rather have a 1-story house that sits in the setback? Because the problem is we can't dictate any kind of architecture.
I understand.
So I understand your concern, but also with a lot of the scrapes that are going on, they're zero lot lining the homes as much as possible and building as high as possible.
Well, to answer your question, I would prefer if they went up rather than toward the street.
Even though this street has the extra right-of-way? Okay.
Yes.
I'd have a similar question. The rest of that street is pretty much set forward. The houses further to the north, I don't know that they're 11 feet, but they're certainly not 25. It did seem to me that moving the house forward is in line with the rest of everything that's happening on that particular block.
Well, I did not measure all the streets in the neighborhood or on Race Street, but I'm assuming that by the Inglewood Code for that R1A area, the 25-foot setback is a requirement. So I apologize if that's not the case for those homes along there, but I would assume that it is, and that they are conforming to the 25-foot setback.
It didn't look that way to me as I drove it today, so, I mean, they all looked like they were pretty far forward relative to, pretty much in line with this one to the north.
Well, as I say, I believe that all of the homes in Hampton Hills, including Floyd Place to Dartmouth University to probably Franklin, I'm not quite sure how far that goes west, were all built by the same, essentially the same builder in the early 1950s. And they were all applying to the existing building codes at that time. I don't think it's changed since then. I don't think the setbacks have changed. I don't think the lot sizes have changed. I think you can build a 32-foot high structure in Hampton Hills, but the setbacks remain the same, 20 feet from the back property line, 25 feet from the front. 35% home on that 9,000 plus square foot property.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for this gentleman from the board? Right. Thank you, sir. Are there any other persons present who wish to speak in opposition of this request? There are none. Staff? Additional comments?
So one, if it's permissible, I'm not sure how the ruling on this is. The applicant would also kind of just like to make a factual statement. I don't think there's any sort of question along with it. I don't know if it was permissible to do that afterwards. If not, I can.
Well, we haven't
read
closed it. I
his-
mean, we can always have him come back up and ask that and make a statement.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and just
For
answer a couple
for
of
staffs, yep.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer a couple of the questions I heard along with it. So one was regarding if a house north or south of this thing was to scrape down to foundation. We have a section of our code dealing with non-conforming structures. Basically, it's to encourage redevelopment of structures that have become dilapidated. Pretty much the way it breaks down to is you're not supposed to non-conform more than you were non-conforming before. So as you know, if they could save a foundation, save some walls in it, that'd be encouraged. So yeah, theoretically for most of them, you know, if you have a extremely cracked foundation and you're gonna have to tear it all out anyways, that'd be something we'd look at. But as far as the way that reads is basically, yes, you can't be more non-conforming than what you were before. Beyond that, you know, I think as far as the front setback, yeah, for all of the R1A, it is the 25 feet. As you can see, though, in this neighborhood, that's these houses are encroaching into that, and this is kind of what the applicant is asking as well. But that's just the way some of these streets are, you know, depending on when the properties were built comparative to the surveying and the planners of 1954.
Right, but that's a house built in 1954.
Right, right.
I know the continued non-conforming use notices go out every year. I used to get. I'm just curious, like, is that a statute of limitations issue? Like, if something non-conforming goes on for a certain amount of time, at that point, there's no enforcement action that would be taken against it, but it would be sort of under these non-conforming rules?
So as far as non-conforming structures are a little bit harder just because you have a lot of cases like this where I bet you most of the neighbors on the street don't even know that they're non-conforming.
Okay.
For things like, say for like a non-conforming use, say for a, you know, an industrial, let's say there was an industrial site on Broadway and they closed down for 6 months, those would be strictly enforced. If you're out of business for 7 months, then sorry, you can't go back with your industrial use on Broadway. As far as these non-conforming structures, you know, there's a little more leniency, obviously, because they probably don't know they're non-conforming anyways.
Any other questions for staff at this point? Thank you. I think the applicant would like to come back up. Mr. Moore?
Just one quick factual statement. I appreciate my neighbor's comments. 3265, the west side of Race is not part of Hamden Hills. The east side of Race is part of Hamden Hills. My father-in-law's in Hamden Hills. I own property in Hamden Hills. But just to distinguish, Hamden Hills is on the other side of the street from where the variance is being requested.
Okay, I have a,
Oh, absolutely.
since you're back.
Oh, sure.
Have you considered of putting a two-car garage? You'd have to move the house around a little bit
Two-car in the front?
in front, and then that would free up that space in the backyard that you might put a two-car garage back there?
I'll be blunt. I didn't want to put a one-car garage in there. I don't like the house the reason I bought the house in the first place that we have today is that there's no garage in front. It's alley entrance. It's actually underneath the house. And I loved it. I love the fact that we've got more green space in front than anyone. But I do not like large garages in front of the house, so I wanted not to do it at all. I did only enough to ensure that my wife has access directly from the garage into the house without walking outside. So that was the compromise that we had to make in this design.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Warner while he's back? Thank you, sir. Staff, any other additional comments?
No, unless you have any additional questions.
Any other questions for staff? Anyone else here wish to add anything? All right, the public meeting is now closed. Is there a motion so we can discuss the case?
Yep, I move that case VAR 2019-001, 3265 South Race Street be granted a variance to encroach 14 feet into the required 25-foot front setback in the R1A zone district. This is a variance to table 16-6-1.1 of the Englewood Municipal Code.
Discussion.
Second.
Oh, I need a second.
Second.
Sorry. Shelley, did you get the second? Perfect. Discussion? Thoughts?
Well, I did drive the neighborhood, and I do think that all the houses to the north were basically the same house, same developer, pretty much in the same line with this 3255, maybe a couple feet further back. I mean, it doesn't feel like it's going to be out of character to be in line certainly with 55 here. Whether it should sit in front of that or not, I don't know. So I think that neighborhood is unique in that regard, so I think it meets the first criteria. I do have an issue with the fourth criteria because it is self-imposed. I mean, certainly they could build behind it, so.
Yeah, I still have an issue with the first and fourth. I could kind of go along a little bit with your thoughts on the first, but you know, when you scrape a house and then you build anew, the regs are what they are at the time. Anyone want to add anything? Any other thoughts, discussion?
I mean, I guess I would basically be supportive if it wasn't for the last item. I don't know how to get around that one.
Yeah, the problem is we have to get 1 through 4 to set up for us, which is not always, it doesn't make sense, but that's what we're given. Are we ready to vote, or do we want more discussion? Any other questions, concerns?
Are we saying it's always a self-imposed difficulty if it's new?
I
Yeah,
think
that's
so.
kind of my question.
Say again?
Oh, that's kind of my question, just generally speaking, if it's a new construction, is it self-imposed? Even if he's trying to match the rest of the houses in the neighborhood on his side of the street.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are is that there's ways to design around it. He can always move it back and have less of a backyard. But to me, the setbacks are what they are. I mean, I go back to the case we had a couple of weeks ago that the guy wanted to go into the back setback because it was a prefabbed home. And it's the setbacks, you know, you wouldn't have been able to tell from the street that he was going to encroach in the back.
I guess my differentiation between this one and that one is that it changed the character of the neighborhood with that one, whereas this one would not.
Right. And I guess to me, what goes to the character in the neighborhood is the architecture. Because you could have a house scrape next door and build something totally within the regs, but look totally out of place for the neighborhood. So I have a hard
Control, yeah.
Right, so I have a hard time falling back on the architectural part of it just because we can't control that. But
Just for fun, for the fourth criterion. Back to the fourth criterion, my difficulty is, isn't any addition to anything a self-imposed difficulty or hardship? Does that, if we're applying it, and we've always struggled with this criterion and what the heck it means.
yeah,
So, I mean, the only way I could see justifying it, I guess, from my perspective, is that it's not a self-imposed difficulty or hardship because he didn't choose that the other neighbors built into the right, or the setback before he purchased that property. So he didn't make that decision.
yeah, but
But
it's a question if one of them should have even had a variance or not. So if someone builds something incorrectly, do we let everyone else build it correctly? Is my fallback position there. I mean, if the other houses had a variance, then I could almost go along with that a little bit easier. But for 4, I mean, it's because it's a scrape. That's what I keep getting back to. If it was an addition or something where the house was set before we had the variances, then I could, before we've always had wiggle room because it's the house was, they already have something there. And the house was set too forward or too back. So I mean, again, everyone, you know, as usual, everyone needs to vote their conscience, but I just have a hard time with not understanding how it clears 4. And even 1.
Another consideration, I guess, that I have is what this number really ought to be. I mean, basically an 11-foot setback instead of 25, where the house next to it is 13. I mean, if it was 13 feet, I'd probably be more likely to approve it, right? And then maybe we change the language to say it can only be 13 feet.
Yeah, I mean, then we're still trending.
Yeah, it doesn't address the other stuff we were talking about, but
Yeah.
if we're going to do it, I would like to have it at 13 feet instead of 11, so it lines up with the houses to the north.
I would be in agreement with amending it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I wouldn't. I mean, we could, if we want to.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that would you like to do a friendly amendment?
Yeah, I guess I would amend it if I'm going to vote.
I mean, we're not even sure he would take
Right.
that.
So yeah, I would move to amend that from 11 feet to 13 feet. So it would encroach 12 feet instead of 14 feet.
So what you're saying is you think that
So the only thing that would change with the motion that's on the table is 14 would change to 12.
Correct.
So are you offering that as a friendly amendment? And if so, I need a motion for that.
Yes, I would make a motion to amend the encroachment from 14 feet to 12 feet as written.
Do I have a second?
Let's see. Yes.
I second.
All right, so we need to vote on that right now. With our little buttons. Shelley?
Mr. Rieger,
I approve.
Ms. Schmitz,
I approve.
Mr. Friesen,
Yes.
Mr. Elstrom,
Yes.
Chair Finn,
I voted no. So it passes. So the new motion on the floor is the applicants are requesting a variance to encroach
12 feet.
12 feet into the required 25-foot setback in the R1A zone district. This is the variance to table 16-6-1.1 of the Inglewood Municipal Code. All right. So does that, anyone want to discuss that, or are we just ready to vote? I mean, I don't know how that cures.
I don't know if that changes everybody else's mind or how that goes, so.
I'm just sitting here, in my head.
So yeah, I mean, to me, I still don't know how it doesn't get me past 4, but if we're ready to vote otherwise, we can vote and move on.
Okay.
All right, let's vote. This work?
Mr. Rieger,
I voted yes. I believe the first criterion that unique physical conditions exist, such as size, shape, location, or topography or surroundings, exist that are peculiar to the land or the structure involved, which deprive the applicant of privileges enjoyed by the other properties in the vicinity, because the neighboring properties already encroach into the existing setback by 12.7 and 11.5 foot. I believe the second criterion has been met, that the variance is consistent with the intent of the zone district, regulations to secure public health, safety, and welfare. I think the third criterion has been met, that the variance will not permanently impair the use of the development or of the adjacent conforming properties or alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And I believe the fourth criterion has been met, that the variance is not a self-imposed difficulty or hardship because the adjacent properties encroach into the existing setbacks already.
Ms. Schmitz,
I voted yes for the reasons stated.
Mr. Friesen,
I voted yes for the reasons stated.
Mr. Elstrom,
You voted yes for the reasons stated.
Chair Finn.
I voted no. It fails both on the first criterion and the fourth criterion. It's self-imposed. He could build it and design it differently to stay within the current variance. I think it's a little bit of a slippery slope when we start looking at property next to a property that's being built when we don't know if they got a proper variance in the first place.
Motion passes 4-1.
That case is closed. Thank you for your time. So I will open the public hearing for case number VAR 2019-003, 3990 South Galapagos Street, Inglewood, Colorado. They are requesting a variance to encroach 11 feet into the required 20-foot rear setback to construct an addition to a single-family residence in the R1C zone district. A 9-foot rear setback would remain. I have verification of the publication and posting of the subject property. Staff, if you could give us an overview.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
State your name.
Eric Sampson. All right, so the variance in front of you is the applicants would like to construct an approximate, I think it's 340 square foot addition into an existing single-family residence. This is in the R1C district. And as you take a look at the picture up on the PowerPoint, you can see that it's a very odd-shaped lot, almost like a comma. Total square footage in the lot is 5,532 square feet. And there's a little bit closer up to see how the existing residence is on the property currently. Again, the applicant's request to be allowed to encroach into the rear setback to construct this addition. And considering the criterions for a variance, being the first criterion that unique physical conditions exist, such as size, shape, location, etc., this is a very unique lot in terms of what we usually see in the city. And also, if they were to wanted to construct an addition elsewhere on the property, they would also need a variance there as well. They would not be able to meet these setbacks, even if they were to build on the south side. So, second criterion, staff feels this is consistent with the intent of the zone district regulations. And the third criterion is that the variance will not permanently impair the use or development of adjacent conforming properties. Staff does not see this having an adverse impact on this criteria. And the fourth criteria is self-imposed hardship, and staff feels that due to the unique shape of the lot that, since the applicants did not agree said lot, that this is not a self-imposed hardship. So overall, staff would recommend approval of this variance request.
So a comma-shaped lot, is that a planning technical term that I'm not aware of?
Yes.
Perfect. Does the board have any question for staff?
We're just digging into this interesting neighborhood map, sorry. There's no alleys back there, it's all city?
Yeah, that's all city ditch. That is just basically the city ditch easement that runs the entirety through that entire neighborhood, kind of cuts through. And so I should note too that the request, they're not going to be encroaching into the city ditch easement at all. So I wanted to make you aware of that as well.
So the city ditch easement, does that easement actually, is that on some of this lot, or is the lot clear of the city ditch easement?
So the lot was designed around the city ditch easement,
Okay.
from what I understand, as
Okay.
it was originally platted with that city ditch easement on the original plat.
Which explains some of the comma-shaped form.
Yeah,
It's a planning technical.
very technical term.
Looks like a comma to me.
It does. Does the board have any other questions for staff at this point? Thank you, sir. If the applicant could please come forward to testify in the case and state your name and address to the secretary who will administer the oath.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Trevor Hammers, 3990 South Galapago Street, depending on your pronunciation.
Yeah, thank you for pointing out I've probably butchered it. Mr. Hammers, we've got your packet with the material you submitted. Is there anything you'd like to add to it or have us also consider?
Not really, however, this all started where we initially were going to go off the back full, 16 to 18 feet. Hired an architect to come draw the plans, wrote the check. First thing he comes back with was, hey, there's absolutely no way this is going to happen. And then he kind of started explaining how it worked, I did find a survey from when I purchased the home. I started to understand that that wouldn't work. You know, with our growing family, we're just looking to add a master bathroom and a walk-in closet, make our house maybe a little more, and not modern, but, you know, to accommodate a larger family, as a lot of the homes in Inglewood are, they don't. So we want to stay there, and that's our plan, and that's why we're going to try to go as far as we can legally without, you know, having to get into the easement. We can't get into the easement is basically how it's been explained. So we figured we'd push the limits on that side of it and just make it the best we can. So.
Perfect. We appreciate you doing it legally. Does the board have any questions for the applicant at this time?
Have you thought about changing the boundaries?
I think we are through with you, Mr. Hammers. Thank you for your time. Are there any persons present who wish to speak in favor of this request? No one indicates so. Are there any persons present who wish to speak in opposition of this request? No one indicates anything. Staff, any additional comments?
Nope.
Staff has no other comments. Board, any other questions for staff? No other questions. Do I have a motion for discussion? The public hearing is now closed. Do I have a motion for discussion? That's why you make the big bucks.
I'll move that case VAR 2019-003 be approved for a variance to encroach 11 feet into the 20-foot rear setback for the construction of an addition to an existing single-family residence.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Shaped like a comma. No, there's a lot unique about this lot. The city ditch and the shape. One of our easier cases.
I don't think anything else makes any more sense than doing this.
I agree with the way the lot is and without just scraping it and starting anew.
And even then, it would be interesting.
It would be very interesting. To me, this seems exactly what we're here for. Any other questions or concerns, or are you ready to vote? Okay. Oh.
Unique is an understatement, that's all.
All right, let's vote. Ms. Warwick.
Mr. Rieger,
I believe, I voted yes. I believe the first criterion has been met, that unique physical conditions exist because of the shape of the lot. I believe the second criterion has been met, that the variance is consistent with the intent of the zone district regulations to secure public health, safety, and welfare. I believe the third criterion has been met, that the variance will not permanently impair the use or development of the adjacent conforming properties or alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And I believe the fourth criterion has been met, that the variance is not a self-imposed difficulty or hardship.
Ms. Schmitz,
I voted yes for the reasons stated, and an additional unique characteristic of the property is the city ditch along its rear lot line.
Mr. Friesen,
I also voted yes for the reasons stated, and would also note that the first criterion, the lot is quite small by most standards.
Mr. Elstrom,
I voted yes for all the reasons stated.
Chair Finn,
I voted yes for the reason stated that it's a comma-shaped lot, and I feel like this is exactly what we're here for.
motion passes 5-1.
Thank you for your time. Public hearing of that case, or the hearing of that case, is now over. Approval of minutes from, hold on, let me get back. Working on it.
Speed's growing.
I know. Approval of minutes from January 9th, 2019. Is there a motion?
I move to approve those minutes.
Is there a second?
Sorry, it's been a long day.
We have you cannot vote, so that puts us into 4. Can we vote with 4 approving the minutes? Does that carry?
When you had 7 people here.
Yeah, you don't have a quorum.
I don't have a quorum. So we cannot approve the minutes at this time. We'll have to do it by email. The same will go, approval of finding of fact.
You'll have to do that. You don't have a quorum.
We don't have a quorum?
People.
Yep. So we'll quickly move past that. I don't need a motion. Staff's choice. Staff.
Well, for the first time in a very long time, we don't have a variance for the next month yet, so.
You were lying to us. Did I notice how you did say yet?
Yeah, well, I gotta leave a little doubt in the comment, so. But as of right now, we do not have anything.
Fantastic. City attorney.
Well,
Oh, no.
yeah. So, the last several meetings we've had, police officers here working overtime, running the metal detector. We can no longer afford that. Can't pay that overtime. So our meetings are going to be moving from this room to a different location at some point.
Okay.
I'm just letting you know.
Can we suggest locations?
We can't do it.
Certain bar, which bar?
I'm just saying, I think
Or
attendance,
One Barrel, or
I think attendance
the
would
Englewood
would
Grand.
increase.
It'll have to be here,
Okay.
but I'm not sure. I just found this out late this afternoon.
Would the time change possibly?
No. The time would stay the same, just the location in this building would be different. So this is the municipal court secured area. So during the day, we have a security guard here all day. And then, but for standard board meetings, we can't, the city just doesn't have the budget for that right now. So we may do it in the community room. I don't know.
Okay.
There'll be a decision made as far as I know. I just found out about it today.
Stay
So I'm
tuned.
bringing it up.
Knowing is half the battle.
Yeah.
Board, so if we don't have a meeting, I will probably suggest perhaps a March Madness dinner holiday. If we, I'll send out an email, see if we can get an agreement on the day and the time. No security will be required.
No.
And then we'll go from there.
Behave yourself.
Exactly. And I'll also invite some of the people from, I know, but I'll invite some of the ghosts from hearings past. And I think that's it, so we're adjourned.